Actually, that's more than I thought it was going to be. So that's great. So you guys at least know what the guts of the internet looks like from the inside. And today we're going to be covering a lot of stuff. We have a really amazing panel here. As you can see, this is a pretty good lineup. And it's going to provide a lot of perspectives from a lot of different layers of infrastructure. Just one last question here. Who here has been following the news about infrastructure and energy? Yeah? Okay. So we know that it's going to be very important. So let's kick things off with some intros. Let's go, Val, with you first, but let's, because we have a lot to talk about, let's go with a little bit about your background, and then also follow on what you're doing here as far as the WEKA in building in the AI era.
Sure, Bill. So my background goes back, let's say, about 15 years, to keep it brief. Former CTO of NetApp, post a SolidFire acquisition, worked with folks in Google on the Borg team to open source Kubernetes and co-create the CNCF Cloud Native Compute Foundation. Took some time away from infrastructure, and then, of course, November 2022, brought all of us back into it at least. And now at WEKA, I'm Chief AI Officer, focused on helping our customers like CoreWeave and Nebius and Together AI and Hugging Face, Stability AI, bring models to market faster, and then my favorite topic, infer them at a profit.
Good to meet you all. Thanks for coming. I'm Lari, McKinsey & Company. I'm a senior partner in the firm, and I think what I do today is two things. So number one, my own clients are tech companies here on the West Coast, but also globally. So helping them with their products, their product adoption, and how they should kind of build those further to be easily adoptable. Second, I lead everything in McKinsey on Gen AI and agentic. So think of our clientele, about 5,000 enterprises globally, on how they drive Gen AI adoption. And pre-McKinsey, I was working with software platforms, so 3D engines, mobile platforms, and so forth as an engineer.
Thank you, Lari. Nawaz?
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Nawaz. I'm the Managing Partner and Chief Growth Officer of Aurum Equity Partners, which is a private equity firm focusing on building next-generation AI data centers. My background is I've worked in more on technology companies like Cisco, Alcatel, before moving into Equinix, where I was responsible for data center operations for entire North America. So Aurum Group has both venture arm as well as a private equity, and our focus has always been to identify the right kind of startups where we can invest and also leverage them as part of our data center journey. I'll go more in details as we go through. Thank you.
Thank you. Ibrahim?
Hey everyone, I'm Ibrahim. I'm a partner at DCM Ventures. We're an early stage fund. We lead seed, Series A, Series B rounds. And I lead our US practice and office and most of our enterprise SaaS investing. In a prior life, I was an engineer. I've worked in public policy, specifically on infrastructure and energy policy. So this topic is very close to heart for me. At DCM, we're investing in AI. We're investing in companies using AI. We're bringing AI to our companies. And we're building in-house as well.
Fantastic. All right, so you guys saw the topic of this panel. It was talking about US dominance. But I think more importantly, we can kind of zoom out and let's really look at things from the macro view. Jeremiah mentioned that the US is in first to market with a lot of AI technologies, and then China is rapidly catching up. And then there's these continents in between, Europe, Asia, right? Many times people have to kind of start choosing where they're going to be building for. So I think it's really important for the crowd here to really understand. Let's frame it up. Why is this so important? I want to hear from every single one of you, starting with Ibrahim.
I would say there's two big macro things in my mind. One is the real specter of AGI, artificial general intelligence, just being around the corner. And at a point when AI can recursively self-improve its own code, like that is the first nation to true AGI, potentially cements an insurmountable competitive advantage. So to me, an investment by government in AI isn't just about the potential economic return on GDP or whatnot. It's a down payment on national security and data sovereignty. Second, I would say, is we're racing along a productivity revolution, the likes of which we haven't seen before. And these ambitions are colliding with the physical realities of the world, whether it's the data we use to train our models, whether it's the chips we run these models on, whether it's the energy to power these chips, or the talent to advance the state of the art. So I think we're in a global race for these scarce resources.
Okay. A down payment on national security. That's a great soundbite. Nawaz?
Yeah, if you look at the kind of revolutions which has happened, industrial revolution is one. The second followed by is the technology adoption in the case of internet. And then the third one is the cloud adoption. But AI is very much close to just like how a country looks at it more from the infrastructure, like roads and railways. So they are not looking at just as a technology innovation. It is all about, can you do it locally? Can you be, not just as he said, it's all about security, data sovereignty. Can you have the kind of infrastructure which is needed to develop all these agents locally? So it's not anymore of a technology play, it's much beyond that. It is considered as more like an infrastructure of roads and railways. I put AI in that category. So that is why you can see it's not about the private sectors coming in play here. It's the government, all the ministers from every sector, they are coming into play and to see what kind of role they have played. You have not seen that in the cloud adoption. You have not seen that in the internet adoption. But AI adoption is more like a semiconductor. You have to have a semiconductor play. You have to have an AI play. That is how I see this adoption.
Lari, you talk to the largest companies in the world trying to solve the most difficult problems. I mean, I think you can provide a really good perspective. Why is this so important?
So maybe I'll give the McKinsey answer to this, right? So the world economy today is about 100 trillion USD, all GDP. Like if we look at growth of that, we're growing roughly, depending on the year, 2 to 3%, right? 3/4 of that growth is actually driven by technology adoption, which today is how we adopt AI in society as individuals in enterprises. For an established economy like US, pretty much most of our growth, especially at this time, will depend on AI and AI adoption. I would say at large, today we're speaking about the infrastructure side. I think there's 4 things really that matters. One is capacity creation, which is the topic of this panel. I think the second is innovation, like how do we innovate? How do we kind of strengthen those ecosystems we have, like STEP is doing? The 2 things we don't speak that much is what is adoption and implementation and how do we speed that up? And the reason I want to mention that is that historically, actually the bottleneck for technology has been always adoption in existing processes and enterprises, right? Because there's a huge infra in the world that we need to renew, which we're now starting to do. And finally, I think what is super important is how we distribute capital. And capital redistribution and the effectiveness of that is one of the measures gets very little talked about, but it's extremely important for an economy to be successful. And I think if we succeed on those 4, I think we can tap into that tremendous growth that AI offers.
Okay, yeah, let me double click on that real quick. So when you say capital distribution, do you mean from an individual level or are we talking about from an economy level? Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Actually both. I think what really matters is that how do we drive investments? I think we there are getting really ambitious, which is good. But second, it does matter also what we do towards individuals. In the end, a lot of the economic welfare is driven by actually consumers, right? Because that creates a rotation in an economy. And that will be one of the big questions on an AI era. So how do we kind of protect and even kind of speed that cycle up? But that's another topic.
Fantastic. Mr. Val.
So let's see if I can compete with Ibrahim on the great sound bites here. From a macroeconomic, before we get into any national security perspective, I personally believe in a few years, let's say end of the decade, we'll be measuring economies by gross token production even more than gross domestic product. AI, if you haven't realized it yet, is an industry, at least at this phase, of more is more. The more tokens you can generate, the more time you give your reasoning models to reason and think, the higher the quality of the answer. And that's ultimately what we're all going for. We're going always for the highest quality answer, then at the highest performance, then at the lowest price. So that's one of the things I think we need to focus on is how do we generate more tokens efficiently as a country, with our allies and so forth. And that requires understanding, we'll keep it simple at this panel, requires understanding at least the incentives, aligned incentives of the stack. So neoclouds and hyperscalers have an incentive to lock you down in terms of GPU rentals for years, months, hours in the spot market. The model providers, as tenants of those clouds, have incentives to train their models quickly and then monetize them as quickly as possible through efficient inference. the Cursors of the world and Claude Code, the agentic companies, Manus AI, Perplexity, Comet, their incentive is to consume tokens as intelligently as possible, and they want dirt cheap tokens. They want more tokens. They're not getting them right now, which is a big topic to discuss. And then finally, you and I, the end users, we don't want to pay variable pricing. We're being forced to pay variable pricing for quality of AI output right now. None of us can really afford that individually or as businesses. We want to figure out this flat rate pricing thing for AI. That's an unsolved problem that we have to tackle.
Fantastic. Dirt cheap tokens. I don't think I've ever heard that term, but we're getting there. Yeah. So Val, while you have the mic, why don't we give just a really quick definition? We're talking about tokens, we're talking about data centers, and we'll be diving into energy. But like, how should the audience here really organize the world, all these layers of infrastructure?
So not everyone, of course, works with all 4 layers. You know, even I don't work with all 4 layers all the time in any particular use case. But really understand the incentives of who you're partnering with, who your immediate supply chain is. So if you're working with, let's just say, Perplexity Comet, you know, if you have access to it, I think it's still restricted access.
I just got mine.
It's a very powerful agent. You know, it kind of is truly the next generation of browsers. So aside from all the headline stuff that Arvind does really well about bidding for the Chrome business and all that, that's a distraction. He's actually building what is the next browser. To do that, he has to consume an enormous amount of tokens. I'm not going to pay a variable cost to use a browser. I don't want to pay anything to use a browser, but you know, we're in this odd era where we haven't yet seen advertising in our AI. That's coming, by the way. That's one of the ways to subsidize a variable cost and get to a fixed cost. So it's really all about figuring out, you know, what can I ask of this browser before I hit the rate limits? And this is actually more acute, less in a consumer context, much more in a developer context. If you spend any time on Reddit, or Twitter X, or really anywhere else where developers hang out, they are really upset. I'll use, you know, nice family-friendly language here. They're really upset at the token rate limits and the throttling that's happening by these tools they've become addicted to. And we're in this odd situation where if you're Claude Code, you know, Anthropic with Claude Code or Cursor, you cannot take money from like your best customers right now because you have to serve the other 80% of the long tail. So these are issues which we have to solve, and we'll get into them in follow-up questions.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. How about Ibrahim? I know we talked a couple of weeks ago, and you know, when we're trying to organize, everybody organize their infrastructure layers. What's the best lens to be able to know which category we're talking about?
I mean, if you look at the infrastructure, there's everything from we can start from bottom up, from the energy and compute infrastructure, the data centers on which these chips are processing, over to the model layer, these are the LLM providers, and so on, to another stack on top of that of the application layer. And so I think there's this division. I think I would encourage everyone to think about it as both this division between hard and soft infrastructure. You have real world physical assets, and then you have the talent and everything else that has to go around and enabling value to be derived from these hard physical assets. So I think I would encourage that framing of hard and soft infrastructure, because the reality is, like, we need both, and we need a lot of both.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's, you know, when we take a look at the cloud layers, like Val pointed out, there's a lot of complications around the economics of tokens and then the applications and the model, right? Hard infrastructure, we're talking about land and dirt, energy, how do we build data centers? And those things take years to build, but the innovation, the change of innovations, we're talking about months now, or weeks, right? So let's dive into the energy side, right? Because behind data centers, the true bottleneck is really the grid, right? Nawaz, you have some thoughts on this.
So before I answer that question, let me talk about the infrastructure question which he asked. So a lot of people have infrastructure definition, straight away they go into the LLM models. But I want you guys to imagine the current world capacity of data center, which is around 50, 55 gig. It took 25 years or more to build that kind of capacity. Okay. Now you are doing 4 times in less than 5 years. That is the data center infrastructure. The power guys are not ready to do that. The construction guys have no idea how to do that at that pace, right? The cooling technology was not improved because all along last 20 years, the data center construction was, or data center build out was done bottoms up approach. They have no idea about what the server is going to be. All they know is, all I have to provide 3 to 5 kilowatts per rack. Today, you are talking about 50 to 100 kilowatts going up to 600 kilowatts. It's going to be top-down approach. What does that mean? That means it's no more just an infrastructure play or construction play. It's the top-down approach, understanding what the roadmap of companies like NVIDIA, then bring the exact right technology, understanding the water needs, understanding the grid needs, what kind of renewables which you need to have. That is the challenge what every country is facing, right? If we have been, as a PE firm, we have been talking to different counties, different cities in New York or other states. They have a 3-year application for just to get connectivity on the grid to get 100 megawatts. So the energy is very scarce. So when someone talks about AI data center, all you have to take away is 2 things. Do we have the power? Do we have the chipset? If you don't have these 2, then you are not talking about infrastructure at all. That means you are not equipped to build any AI infrastructure. Next comes all the, the servers, the stack, the software stack. But now things have changed. Coming back to the power requirements, all along, it was more of less than 2% of the world's requirement of power, hypothetically, 1.5 to 2%. But the next 5 years, it's going to go up to 5%, which is huge for any country or anywhere, right? Now they are no more, the ESG part, which was very critical during cloud, now that has become very critical. They are looking at SMRs, natural gas pipelines.
Nuclear,
SMRs, modular reactors.
Yeah.
So those innovations, that means the regulation have to change. It has to relax. Yeah. And the countries which can adopt faster, change the policies faster from the government, that's where those countries will be able to provide that energy. If you start relying on green energy, it will be there, but it's a long road for them.
That's great points. And then I heard a stat the other day that the current data center infrastructures, like Nawaz pointed out, can't support the high power capacities. Can anybody guess how many, what percentage of the current data centers are able to support AI workloads? Just throw out some numbers. 50%? 2, only 10%. So we have a huge demand spike, and in the current infrastructure, 90% of the current infrastructure cannot sustain that, and that's exactly what Nawaz is saying. Now,
can I add to this?
Yeah.
So what Syed said is that if you think strategically, and you started this panel by teeing up US versus China here, I would actually make a claim that we're quite far behind China at the moment in this race.
That's bold.
And if you think about 3 factors that play into this, one is capital, right? We're not behind on capital. We're doing actually remarkably well there. Second is talent. And talent, I don't mean people in this room. I mean what Syed said, which is that who can build the data centers? Who can go do the electrical installations in those? Do we have enough actually people who are building the properties and kind of constructing those up? Just to give you a proxy, within the energy field, what Syed highlighted, US has been flat in generation capacity, so power generation, last 30 years. There has not been no net additions to the capacity. Now in the next 5 years, we suddenly need 10% more. So the AI intensity he talked about in US will rise from about 2% of generation being used for data centers to somewhere around 12 to 14% in the next 5 years, right? We're behind on this, and I think it's a national security.
We need to make that down
issue.
payment, like Ibrahim said.
Exactly. And I think the third I would highlight is that building data centers, it is a value chain topic, and it's a very strategic topic there, as Syed said. And if we look at generation, so US is falling behind on renewables, right? If you look at China basically owns the solar value chain at the moment. If you look at wind, that's largely owned from outside US. We're okay on nuclear, but I think when we look at the generation mix and the ability to kind of produce the turbines, have the IP and ramp that up, I think there's a serious topic there also to be addressed. So I would actually make a claim that there's quite a bit of urgency here that goes beyond capital that we need to fix on a national level.
And that's why we need to have these conversations, right? Ibrahim, you have some great thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a nuance here that's really important to understand. So, having worked in energy and energy policy, imagine, if you will, a hot summer Texan or Arizonan day. Historically, 80% of the energy is used in 20% of the time. It's in the middle of the day when it's freaking hot outside and you all switch your ACs on. That is changing rapidly because data center and the power that powers it is not all the same. The energy mix matters because the type of workload you get from AI is a 24/7, 365 voracious demand for energy that in the energy industry parlance, you would call a base load versus a peaking load. And the best type of energy mix paired to that, as controversial as it may be, you alluded to this, Nawaz, is nuclear. Nuclear is probably the best choice, as controversial as it is. And it's technically green and carbon free. And that has implications because if you follow that thought process, the nuclear technology we have today, a lot of it is best co-located with very cold bodies of water, coastal regions, for example. And that has implications on where you place data centers. Because if I were to make a bet, it would be on nuclear, and it would be on not just data centers connecting with the grid, but co-locating with the grid, thinking forward.
Real quick, let's go just across, rapid fire. If it's not the grid, what is going to be the next most used alternative source of energy? Is it nuclear? Is it biomass? Is it nat gas? Just real quick, what do you think that would be?
I'm going to bet on nuclear.
Betting on nuclear.
So if you look at the way data centers been announced, at least in US, it's all about natural gas. You know, fracking, cracking, whatever you call it. Natural gas it is. SMRs is the future, but it has a long way to go because of various certifications compliant. But that is the future. But right now, for the next 5 years, I don't see any alternative other than natural gas as a primary source because you are not getting enough power from the current grid, which has already been exhausted.
Okay. Lari, what's your answer?
I can also comp these guys. So I'm a big believer in nuclear, but I also do believe in renewables, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of solar.
Solar. Val.
I got to be contrarian here because everyone is talking about similar things. I would say the biggest opportunity for us is virtual energy.
Virtual.
And so what do I mean by that? Today, if you take a look at how these AI factories work under the covers, they are primitive, pre-Model T, pre-assembly line, in terms of how we actually generate tokens out of an AI factory. We literally make the GPUs go to the work redundantly and do the same thing over and over again versus bringing the work efficiently through proper AI assembly lines to the infrastructure, to the GPUs. So one of the greatest, historical advantages of the US that continues to this day is just the entrepreneurship and the variety of experimentation, especially in Silicon Valley, the tolerance for failure, which is not the same in China. And so that's one of our advantages here is bringing innovation to how we consume energy radically more efficiently, 10x, 100x more efficiently than today inside these AI factories and generating fundamentally virtual energy because we can't build the nuclear power plants we need fast enough. We can't even ship, the natural gas efficiently, and it doesn't really do wonders for the environment, en route or once it lands. So we need to play to our strengths, and that's implementing virtual energy. Massive opportunity here.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay, so let's talk about real quick. We've been talking about energy, and now it's a global arms race or a competition. We see a lot of news headlines. Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. are coming closer together, right? And in a partnership. And it's quite different than what we've seen in years past. Lari, any thoughts as far as, how is that going to go? And are we going to work better together, really, between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C., or how will that play out?
I think we have to, because the agendas are aligned at the moment. So everything discussed here. So for example, for Silicon Valley, AI regulation all the way from like user data to then how we treat the different parts of the value chain down to things like Syed mentioned, like construction rights, etc. All matters now. And what we're trying to do is to cut lead time from each one of those, right? Because that will enable the innovation and the scaling. So I see that as a very crucial part that has to come together.
Okay, fantastic. Nawaz, you actually have a project a U.S. project that is overseas that kind of hints towards this collaboration starting. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a project going on in LATAM where the US is also part of that opportunity. It's still in the progress, but the whole idea is everyone has understood that it is not just about the capital. If you have, you can do it on your own. It's not pure technology play anymore. It's a public-private partnership is what is needed. So what does it mean? The power requirements, the connectivity requirements, the land, the funds, the federal grants, the policy changes, all this is part of the public, which is the public government. The government policies have to be part of that. Now the private, what does the private brings in? The private is bringing technology, the scale, the innovation, and adoption, right? Earlier, if you look at the cloud and all those things, it was completely private. The public has, the government has no policies or nothing. It's just more of understanding the data or sovereignty, those areas. But now it is not anymore. If you want to be a leader in any country, if you look at the kind of announcements, it is the government which is coming together with the private sectors and announcing it together. And that is a reality, and that is how you are going to see more and more often. It is not going to be, I have the capital, I have the land, let me go ahead and do it. No, you need to have public partnership. You need to have public-private, and that is what we are seeing and we are pursuing in LATAM, and that is what we are planning to do in Asia as well as in US. Everywhere, you have to bring the community together, the local community, the local utility provider, the connectivity provider, everyone together in order to do that. Otherwise, you are stuck in the regulation. That means even if you have all the innovation, but adoption and implementation, along with the supply chain issues, all these different things, you cannot solve it on your own.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. We're going to shift topics a little bit. We're going to go up the layers into the cloud. For the folks here, you see there's each one of these layers is a really deep topic. We're going to save some time, 10 minutes at the end, so please save your questions, and then we're going to call on them, right? But let's get into the back up to the software layers where the rubber meets the road, which is the workloads, right? And that's changing. Lari, you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's maybe more of a reminder, which is that we've seen only the first generation of Gen AI and the workloads, and that has been the usage we do mostly as individuals to generate content, right? That's been the majority of the workload. And now we've gotten lately, literally in the last year, a bit into programming at a scaled way. What we haven't seen yet are the enterprise workloads. And I think our belief is that if we look at the demand side of the data center equation, the enterprise workloads are starting to be moving. So a lot of our discussions at McKinsey with our clients is that how do we build workflows purely on agents? And then when we start to talk of large enterprises which are doing sometimes hundreds of millions of transactions daily, those workloads will drive a lot of the demand. And that's all still coming. Then maybe more from the software side, if I look at my clientele on the SaaS side, so the software as a service companies, none of them yet have enterprise-grade agentic systems that are driving these workloads, right? We're seeing a lot of marketing, but production-grade systems are not yet there. In other words, I actually see a very positive future from there, and I think we'll see almost like a surge of demand coming in the next couple of years as the internal processes start moving to be agentic.
That's a good comment. And then Val, WEKA was part of AI Infra Summit and back in May, and you guys were talking about economics. So on this particular topic, it seems like you guys are already skating to that puck. So expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so just in general, I can't hype agents enough right now. If you take a look at the truly exponential progress that we've been on this curve for a couple of years at least, this moment of feeling the AGI is happening for software developers in particular. Who uses Claude Code here? So that's pretty healthy. What do you generally think of it? You like it? You don't like it? Is it too expensive? Is it too cheap? My feedback is I like to listen to the skeptics, the deep skeptics of any user community. So inside WEKA, we have some pretty sophisticated engineers. One of them has this nickname, the Prince of Darkness. He's hyper skeptical about everything. since he started using Claude Code, and this, I don't own stock in Anthropic, it's not a paid promotion here, he has completely shifted his opinion on Gen AI and on agents, because they were crap 6 months ago. They weren't, the hallucination rates, the effort invested to generate quality output wasn't there in a return. That has changed this summer. And it's very important for us sitting here to acknowledge that. This exponential progress is happening right now. And what that means, to Lari's point, is we're going to be seeing for these successful agentic applications insane token volumes. These things are not chat sessions. They don't just have a few prompts even and responses. The agents we're working with that we profile have 150 turns, 150 prompts and responses. They often work in parallel instead of sequentially serially. So there is a reason why Anthropic, at the end of this month is imposing severe rate limits and throttling on their top usage plans, is because they just don't have the energy capacity, the GPU capacity from Amazon, and even the software infrastructure to be able to serve the surge in valuable tokens that's coming out here. So we have this dilemma of super high quality and enormous business value out of the subset of successful agents and the inability to serve that actual capacity right now. These are the challenges we have to solve. There's, again, efficient ways to introduce assembly lines into these AI factories and solve them, but it's a Tetris game. You have to figure out how these
So you're saying this is kind of the first sign that we're hitting a ceiling of sorts, right? Because now it's constrained by the supply chain behind that. Are there other companies that are also kind of hitting that same ceiling?
I think the headlines is all you need right now. I can give you a lot of vertically specific examples you haven't heard of, but again, if you take a look at all the popular agents, Manus used to be on a wait list and is very, very expensive. It's a premium service because the token costs are high. We've already covered Perplexity Comet. Again, Claude Code, Cursor, with or without agents, they've got severe rate limits. So all the most popular, and we're talking multi-$100 million a year brand new startups now. Cursor's on a $600 million ARR in the last 18 months alone. They're the ones that are the poster children for seeing this value and feeling the pain of delivering it.
Lari, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think Val's point brought a point in mind, which is that the workloads have been quite homogeneous today, right? So when we talk of programming, we talk of like Claude 4, we talk of now GPT-4, maybe Gemini 2.5. So the latest models, because they're so much better. Turn your site to an enterprise, right? You have an IT service management project in the back, or process in the back office, right? Somebody calls that they need a new laptop, right? You do not need the latest generation large language models for that. Actually quite the opposite. And what I mean by that is that often a much more distilled model, so what you may call small language model, that is specifically fine-tuned for a process, whatever the parameter count, 30 billion parameters, running on on-prem servers, and you not changing that thing for a couple of years is the best way to go. So I think what we'll also see is that the dialogue on Gen AI and agents, I think it will become a lot more heterogeneous, where we see a variety of solutions that are like bespoke built for a specific purpose, especially when we start to talk of applying them like in operational processes with lots of volumes.
Nawaz?
Yeah, so I want the audience to see a little bit differently. For example, if you remember 10 to 15 years back, the cloud adoption had its own, curve, which means earlier it started with less than 5% because people were not believing in it, and now it's more than 60% of the workload. You are going to see the same kind of adoption for AI. The moment AI currently, which is 10 to 15% of the workloads which are there it's going to go up to 60 to 70%, but it's going to take time because people need to understand what's the token economics, how easy it is, can the enterprise do it on their own without sharing the data in the public. There is going to be, just like private cloud, there is going to be a private AI. There are now, earlier we brought in hyperscalers as the customer. Now you have AI providers. OpenAI, Claude, or all these, they are also building their own data centers. What does it mean? You are going to have a completely different sectors. The token economics also going to change. It's going to much reduce. A100, whatever the number of tokens it can generate, twice is what a H100 can generate. A GB200, which is the newest chipset, it can generate 10 times more than the H100 at a lower cost. So this curve is also going to improve. Deep sea kind of movements, the algorithm, all these things will also change. So the adoption will become much more easier. Distillation models will come in. Enterprise will start feeling comfortable to use it without relying too much on the cloud provider.
Thank you, Nawaz. Ibrahim, why don't you close us out on this topic, how workloads are changing?
I mean, I want to double click on two things Val mentioned. One is this idea of coming against bottlenecks. And to Nawaz's point, this isn't just about investing in energy and data center infrastructure. This is about investing in fundamentally more efficient architectures as well. That's equally important. Second, and you use this term, agentic. That is the key word here. Because we are shifting from simple inference workloads, text and image generation, to complex, multi-step agentic workloads that could take any number of probabilistic steps, whether it's 3 or 300. And as enterprises start deriving value from this, data sovereignty, privacy, security, these all come and get elevated to board-level conversations in national security. And that's why you're seeing such a massive boon in private cloud and data sovereignty. So there you go.
Got it. All right. So we want to leave some room for Q&A, so make sure you guys queue up your questions, right? But we're going to close this off with, let's do a provocative, bold prediction, rapid fire, 30 seconds, right? Ibrahim.
Nawaz, you earlier mentioned something I liked, which is you drew this analogy to public roads and train networks. And I see AI as the new digital divide isn't access to internet or a cell phone. It's whether you have the ability and skill to command intelligence. So I think of the future of AI as a public good. I want to see a future where we are enabling and empowering every American citizen, all 300 plus million people out there, with the skills and aptitude and access to the ability to make the most use of AI, so that all of us together are not just watching the future happen, we're actively participating and shaping in it.
Very aspirational. Provocative and bold.
Yeah, if you look at how the AI is being developed with public-private, the whole idea is to empower the users, empower the public with all the power what was available only to the private or handful of few. Now they can go and build whatever they want. They can solve a lot of manufacturing issues, technology issues. The adoption, you are taking the human intelligence from the ground level to the next because of AI. That is how I see it. So that is why if you look at it, all the investment, all the government and everything is investing heavily because they know the scale at which they can adopt and build and open up the human intelligence is going to be humongous. That's how I see it.
All right, provocative and bold. I think Val has something for that, but Lari, please.
He has the great taglines. I admire that, Val. I would actually approach this from a slightly different angle. Based on what I've seen, I have no worries. We will innovate, we will scale this, we will adopt it in enterprises. My worries are different. My worries are, number one, we need to solve re-employment in the society. Number one challenge for a stable society. Number two, we need to solve capital distribution, right? Currently, tech distributes capital to a very small part of population. Capital distribution speed is actually coming down in a society. We need, right? And thirdly, we need to solve actually what is the role of an individual in a society, including workforce, because right now we draw so much of our identity from work. I actually think that the economic side and the scaling side, zero worries. These three topics, I think they should be something each one of us thinks and invest part of our time to.
Fantastic. Mr. Val, close us out.
All right, let's shoot for the stars here. Instead of universal basic income, I think we need to consider public-private partnerships for, yes, universal basic tokens. And let me tell you why. If you are a consumer
That's provocative.
here, if you're a consumer here and you're using free tiers of AI only, you're not getting anything remotely close to what the state of the art of AI is. I hate to break this to you. You have to be on a paid plan. You have to be on a pretty high paid plan to see the enormous value of AI today, right now. I work with developers who spend $6,000 a month on tokens. In 1 hour, they generate fully complete, secure tested, documented apps, full SaaS apps in 1 hour. But they're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars per version of that app. So unfortunately, it's unevenly distributed, right? The future is unevenly distributed, and we have to fix that. And universal basic tokens is essential, I think, for a general population to get the real benefits of AI today.
Are we going to see a Val 2028 campaign?
Yeah, sure.
Universal basic token for everybody?
Which I never will, but yes.
That's fantastic. All right, let's open it up for questions to the audience. Sir.
Hey, thanks so much. Hey, Nawaz, you had mentioned. Nawaz, you had mentioned that roads were part of public policy, and if you look at a lot of the governments, not the U.S., and what they actually run, they own the airports, they own the telecom, and they run these airlines on behalf of their people. So what is it about AI public policy that the rest of the world knows that maybe Silicon Valley doesn't?
So, that's a very good question. I think the question is how the other countries are adopting from the government policies. So if you look at some of the Middle East announcements, what are they trying to do? They are trying to do what Val just, talked about, giving a paid version to every public consumer. That means they're empowering them with the right tool, right? So when you are empowering and when you have this public-private, you have control from day one, not just in data sovereignty, how it should be ethical AI. Ethical AI is a big topic. I don't even want to go into that details, but it is all about not just security. It's about how and who is going to use it, how well it is going to be adopted, how controlled it is going to be. At the same time, without stopping them from innovating, without impacting the GDP, and without without blocking anyone to have that innovative mindset and approach. So that is why if you look at the approach, what governments are taking in other countries is more about, can I start from day one rather than coming late in the game and making the changes, which will be too late. You don't want to have discussions about, oh, this is not ethical, there is a compliance issue. You start from day one. That is what the AI in other government policies, which even we have to do it. And you can see, if you go and do a search, a lot of governments have already defined what is AI policy means. And there are a lot of governments who are still struggling to figure out. That's the difference.
Fantastic. Let's. We have a couple more minutes. Let's see if we can squeeze in a couple more questions. 30-second answers. Yes.
Okay. With power plants going across natural gas, according to Bloomberg, and it takes us 10 years to build a power plant. We need 2 power plants for water. We're running out of water on the planet. Can we do something individually, like critical thinking, like when we did SLOCs for FPGAs? Because water is not part of the energy scope 3 costs that we're measuring. So have you guys thought, it's costing way too much for tokens? What can we do individually? Should we count the number of functional calls we're doing, which is 1/7,000th liter of call per function call?
Yeah, stop burning tokens. It's first up, right, Val?
Let's call for extreme transparency in exactly the water usage, the energy usage of all the tokens we're using, particularly at the API level, because that's the high volume token usage, not the consumer level.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in on that? Just quick? No? All right, one more question.
Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Michael Walker, the founder of Addy. That was a great panel. Quick question. Where does Stargate play in all this? And do you guys have any insider information?
We didn't even talk
about
about
That's the big
Stargate.
dog. I mean, yeah, come on.
Yeah, how about this? Let's close it off with 30-second answers on Stargate. Thoughts on Stargate?
Stargate's just a proxy for what's required here. OpenAI doesn't have a business without massive infrastructure, infusion of capital into projects like Stargate. It's very interesting that Stargate is very much offshore as much as onshore. So I think it's a proxy for the industry. Not the best one, not the optimal one, but the current one.
It's a starting point. Lari?
Yeah, I think in many industries, like value goes upstream, right? Value goes to the data center layer easily. I think it's Sam's hedge, right? He's buying independence with that, and I think it's a brilliant move if he can make it work.
Nawaz?
Yeah, I think Stargate is a good blueprint to see how you can adopt. It's as simple as that. It's a blueprint of how you can make all the people come together and develop. It's not just for US, every country, that's what you are seeing. It's a blueprint of adoption. increasing, ramping up the adoption, bringing all partners, and the capital providers see an efficiency on their what they are investing in. They want to see the returns as well, because these are $500 billion, $1 trillion investment which is happening. They want to see the results as well. So it's a perfect way of adopting it.
Thank you. Gentlemen, it's been an honor. Everybody, please give it up for our panel
Round
today.
of applause. Thank you, everybody. Bill, good job, man, leading that. So I hope you guys have better insights about the market. Thank you, gentlemen.